I don't care how you have to get to point B, just get to point B. And if some people it's walking a straight line, some people you have to walk backwards and do a somersault and twist around. Whatever it is you got to do to get yourself going, do it. Welcome back to the Astrology Report. My name is Cam White, and this is for the 13th through the 19th of February of 2023. This week is a lot more exciting. There's a lot more action going on this week. So let's go ahead and get started. But first, remember, we have 2023 calendars available for you. We have a day sect version and a limited edition night sect version in Latin. These are my favorite 2023 calendars. If you use coupon code at checkout, Cam White in just one word, you'll save 10% off. These posters are absolutely beautiful. They're really, really high quality. They're absolutely amazing. They're my favorite. This is why I'm doing this collaboration, because I actually really like these posters. And like I said last week too, this is the calm before the storm. I would actually say the storm's actually starting to roll in a little bit this week. So, and when I say that too, I'm talking about on like a world level. But something I ended off with last week was just the idea that a lot of change is coming, and it doesn't just it comes very slowly, and then all of a sudden it comes all at once. And that's kind of what we're seeing, right? It's slowly starting to come in, it's slowly starting to change, and then it's all going to come at once between March and April. So anyway, we start this week off with the moon in Scorpio making a trine to Venus. It will then make a square to Saturn, and then it'll ingress into Sagittarius. So kind of emotions all over the place. As the moon's in Scorpio, again, that angsty feeling, that like not feeling good, feeling a little bit resentful and kind of revenge mode, goblin mode, if that's still a thing. Moon's going to trine Venus, though. I love Pisces and Scorpio. Like those two signs working together is very funny to me. Because like Scorpio's like, I hate my life and I'm emo and nothing's good and darkness. And then Pisces like, that's fine. That's fun. And Scorpio's like, what? Like, you think that? Like, that's the Scorpio Pisces stuff I like. So as the moon's in Scorpio making a trine to Venus, there is this sort of, fun with it. There is this sort of like, yeah, the moon's in Scorpio, so emotionally we're angsty, but that could also create beautiful art, right? Like I think of like, I don't know, like the Smiths or something like that. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but there's something about emotional turmoil and trining Venus and Pisces where that creative, like a creative outlet could really help with that and make something, good out of it. But then the moon's going to make a square to Saturn. And this is where it's just frustrating. Like, again, the moon in Scorpio is like wanting to have it, not necessarily wanting to have it your own way, but just full of angst, full of, resentment. And it's squaring Saturn in Aquarius where it kind of just ruins the vibe. Like, have you ever been out with a group of people and just someone just is fucking not cool? Like you and all your buddies, you're going out, everything's fine, but you have that one person who just makes it a chore to be with them, and they're not fun, they're not positive, or I shouldn't even say they're not positive. It's just that they have like this heaviness and they make everything about themselves and nothing's good enough, or it's not fun. That's kind of like this moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius where, there might be this emotional resentment or turmoil that just ruins the vibe of the group and the collective. And the sun's in Aquarius right now, right? Like the will and the energy is very low. So I would look at this as kind of like a low energy day for the most part. Not feeling very motivated, feeling very stuck, feeling very, in the trenches, in the mud. But luckily, by the time we get to the very end of Monday, the moon will enter Sagittarius. So late into Monday night, when the moon goes into Sagittarius, it's like, for example, let's say you're going out with your friends. There's that one person that's really low vibe and really annoying. And then you're done going out and you're like, oh, fine. Like it almost feels better to go home after one of those things than actually being out. And that's like the moon late into Monday night. So that really actually won't come up until Tuesday, because on Tuesday is when you're going to see the moon make a sextile to Mercury. It will then trine Jupiter, but then later on in the day on Tuesday, it will go opposite Mars. And this is when Jupiter leaves shadow. So this is actually really exciting for a few reasons. But let's talk about the moon real quick. Again, the moon doesn't enter Sag until late Monday night. But then earlier in the morning, the moon's going to make the sextile to Mercury, where it almost kind of reminds me of like you go out and it's not a fun time because someone ruins it. And then you get home and you text your buddies. You're like, man, like so-and-so is being awful. And they're like, yeah, that sucked. Like, and you can just kind of relate on that and kind of like joke about it, right? But as the moon's in Sagittarius, sextiling Mercury in Aquarius, I think this is this waning moon, right? We're kind of, the difference between a full moon is there are things accelerating, there are things gaining, there is momentum coming up, versus a waning moon is I mean, the opposite. Like it's, things are starting to calm down. Things are starting to, for example, maybe you've had plans to go out with people, then you go out and it's like, finally, those plans are done. I have to still do my day to day, but let's get ready to, make new plans and let's get ready to get in that new start phase. But that new start phase doesn't happen until like the new moon, of course. But the moon sextiling Mercury is kind of like, well, this is the moon in Sag, right? So our emotions are really connected to, our point B. Like, what is our target? Where are we going next? What trail are we trying to go down? And it sextiles Mercury, where there's this sort of, again, a connection to our thoughts, our rationale. And this is a fixed Mercury, right? So Mercury is in a fixed sign. We're going to be a little stubborn. Like the fixed signs are the absolute most stubborn people. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, stubborn. That could be good. That could be bad, depending, at least they have very strong wills for the most part. It just depends on where their will lies, like what their why is. But Mercury's in a fixed sign. So our ideas and our thoughts are very fixated on something. They're very, Aquarius is very black and white, top, bottom. And so Mercury is thinking in one way of doing things, and it's having all these mental gymnastics as to why it has to be this way. But as the moon's in Sag, sextiling, Mercury, it's like, okay, well, if this is the way that things are, what does that mean for me now moving forward? Which I like. Like Monday's a little bit rough, but going into Tuesday, it's like, all right, I'm out of that funk now, and now I could see the bigger picture. And the moon, after it sextiles Mercury, where it's kind of gaining the ideas, thinking about things, the moon's then going to trine Jupiter. And this is when Jupiter leaves shadow. So typically, Jupiter's shadow periods don't really matter. It's not like Mercury retrograde or a Venus retrograde or even a Mars retrograde, right? Like Jupiter's going to spend 1 year in a zodiac sign and it's going to go back and forth. But I think what's important about this is Jupiter's in the part of the sky where it kind of comes back and forth into signs. So if we go through 2022, at the very end of 2021, Jupiter entered Pisces and Jupiter flew through Pisces. Pisces is a very short sign. This is why Pisces risings are like I know I'm going to say this and people are going to be like, think that they're special. Well, maybe you are a little special. But Pisces risings are like the rarest sign to have rising because it's a short sign versus like Virgo, Leo risings. Like I think it takes 2.5 hours or Virgo's like 2.5 hours to rise over the ascendant versus Pisces is like less than an hour. So because of that, you just don't see as many Pisces risings because it's just a small window of time. But Jupiter flew through Pisces because it's a very small sign and it went into Aries. It dipped into Aries from May, June, July, it stationed retrograde. And then it was August, September, and then October, it went back into Pisces. So we had like 5 or 6 months of Jupiter in Aries. But then it went back into Pisces, stationed direct, and then it moved forward. And so we've only been working with the things that have happened between May and October with Jupiter, at least. So when we're talking about Jupiter, we're talking about abundance, we're talking about faith, we're talking about belief. It's Jupiter in Aries. What are we, charging forward with? Where are we just being courageous? We're finally done doing the thing that we've been back and forth with, and we're moving on to new territory where it's like, for example, Jupiter and Aries, I've been talking a lot about just kind of like Kool-Aid man busting through the wall. And Jupiter and Aries is kind of like charging forward. And then it's stationed retrograde where it's like, oh, wait, we did that at the wrong time. Then it went back into Pisces, like, all right, I need to get more confident again. And then it charged forward again. But now we're actually charging forward past the point that we were at since, July. July is where Jupiter was at this time. So as Jupiter's now moving forward, it's like, hey, we're doing this again. We're now, it's kind of like, for example, riding a bike, your first time without training wheels. Maybe you took off the training wheels and you rode for a second, but then you fell, you scraped your knee, you cried, you got to get your boo-boo kissed. Jupiter goes back into Pisces where it's like, let's do the training wheels again. And then Jupiter goes back into Aries. You take off the training wheels. You do the ride and now you're good at it. Now you can ride down the street. Now you can ride here. Now you can ride there. That's what's going on with Jupiter and Aries. It's like now that you've got that little bit of confidence and you've redone the thing that you had to do again, now you get to expand into the universe, right? Like, riding a bike was my whole childhood. Like, that's all I got to do. I didn't have video games. My mom didn't let me have shit, really. We didn't have like TV. Well, we had TV, just I wasn't allowed to watch it. It was like my bike. That's all I had. So I really relate to the bike analogy. But as the moon trines Jupiter, it's like, hey, it feels fucking sick to not have training wheels on. Like, I'm a big boy now. That's what it feels like. At least that's what my mom would say. And so I want you to just think about like not riding with the training wheels on anymore. Like you've got this, and now you're a big boy or a big girl, whatever you want to call yourself. But then the moon's going to go opposite Mars throughout the day. So while on Tuesday there is this sense of confidence, there's this sense of, moving forward into something new. The moon will go opposite Mars. Will be a little bit distracting where it's like, am I going to go here? Am I going to go there? What am I going to do? I think the other thing too is maybe, crashing again and scraping your knee. But, the most important part about riding without your training wheels is like you're going to crash, but it's not the crash that's important. What's important is, are you going to get back up again? And really take that to heart, because there's so many people, when I talk to my clients or I just talk to people in general that are doing whatever in their lives, it's like they see one failure, they fail one time and they think that is the universe's sign for them to stop. That's not true. The universe is giving you a problem, and it's up to you to decide what you do with that. You can allow that for you to stop, but you could also just look at that as a setback, and you could look at that as a lesson. For example, if you're riding without your training wheels and you're riding and then you turn really sharply and then you crash, well, you go, well, you could either go, well, I'm never riding a bike again. This just isn't for me. Or you can just go, well, maybe I just won't jackknife my, steering wheel, my bars, and, eat shit. Maybe I'll just lean into the turn a little bit more. And that's kind of the thing with this moon opposite Mars is like, you're going to crash, but you have to get back up again. And you got to learn from it too. It's not like, you could take this to your relationships. You could take this to your business. You could take this to your work, whatever it is. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to fail. But if you let that stop you, well, you're never like, what's that? The Ricky Bobby, the Talladega Nights, if you're going to, you might crash and burn, but if you don't take that turn, you're never going to learn. That's kind of like what this is. You have to learn something from it, and you can't let that hold you back, right? That Mars retrograde period was also this time of, for example, using the training wheel analogy, let's say, you're like, how to ride a bike without training wheels for dummies. You had to research it. You had to learn everything. And now it's time to actually apply what we've learned. It's time to apply all this information that we know. And we know that we're going to fall. And we know that if we get back up and we try again, we'll have an ultimate success. And you just have to get back up again. So, and Tuesday's an excellent day for that, because Jupiter's now moving out of Shat. Like, this is like, there's a few days maybe in the week. And this is on Valentine's Day, by the way. There's a few days in the week, or there's a few times that I would say, like, maybe you should just stop and give it a break. Like, if you're having a frustrating time with a project, just put it down and do something else. This is a time where it's like, you're going to have some walls, but you have to get back up and keep trying again. But Venus isn't going to conjoin Neptune. I just wanted to make a note about Valentine's Day, that Venus is going to conjoin Neptune. I think I said this last week of like, it's kind of like going on a Tinder date and being like, wow, this person's great. And then they kind of like ghost you, or they're full of shit or whatever, So Valentine's Day looks very fun. It looks very delusional, but it's moon and Sag trining Jupiter opposite Mars. Looks pretty fun to me. But we go into Wednesday, and that's when the moon is going to make a square to Neptune. It's going to sextile Saturn, and Venus will conjoin Neptune. So while Valentine's Day is fun, and then you wake up the next morning and you're going to be like, I got fucking played. This is why you should just get off Tinder and all the dating apps. But the moon and Sag is going to make a square to Neptune. And this is kind of like, what? Where am I going? What is this? I think that's the other thing. It's kind of like, going to the training wheels analogy. It's like you're riding your bike, and now you're riding your bike. You're like, now what? Now where do I go? Like, for example, I lived in a cul-de-sac, and my mom would not let me go past the stop sign. She didn't let me go past the stop sign until I was like, I don't know, 12. So like, I literally just had to ride in this fucking circle for like years. And I don't know, that sounds very moon and Sag squaring Neptune of like, I'm just going to ride around in a circle and play with my imagination. But the moon in Sag squaring Neptune is it again, when I think about the long-term vision stuff, is like, when it comes to manifesting, I don't like using that word just because I don't have to explain why. But when it comes to the law of attraction or manifesting, you have your vision, right? You have your ideal, but a big part of it is not getting lost in the details. Like, yeah, you can be very specific, but if you're like, this is the way it has to look exactly, like you're setting your expectations too high, it's going to be easy for you to be disappointed. Like, for example, like let's say you want to make more money this year, and let's say you only make $50,000 a year, but you're like, I want to make $1 million this year. Okay, well, do you have any conceivable path to actually doing that? No. Okay, well, if you make a goal that's so high and out there and that you can't even get to, when you don't get, it's just going to be easier to be like, well, I can't do it. Well, I can't do it. How about you make a goal that is a little bit out of your comfort zone, but that you do have a pathway to? Let's say you don't have a pathway to make $1 million in 1 year, but let's say you make 50,000 and you could easily make 70,000 if you wanted. But what would challenge you is, how about making 100,000? And that's something where you can go, okay, that's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but that is enough for me to be, it's enough to get that competitive edge, right? And I say all that to say, it's like, you can't just Moon and Sag square Neptune of like, oh, I'm just gonna have my ideals and my vision and my dream and it's all gonna come true. It's like, that's not gonna help you. You have to take things one step at a time. And the reason I brought up the law of attraction manifestation stuff is also, you have to realize when you have manifested something, right? Like, for example, like, it's super easy to just always be concerned with what we don't have, but it's super hard to take inventory of the things that we do have. And like, it's kind of hard to, it's hard to explain and also not hard to explain. There's a level of just being able to recognize that you, for example, so many of you right now are living a life and are doing something that you dreamed of doing. Like, let's say you're an artist. Let's say you're a musician. Let's say you're just a business owner. And it's super easy to be a business owner and just be like, oh, well, I'm not doing this well enough and I want this and this isn't working well. But reflect back 5 or 10 years ago and think about, what shitty job were you in and how bad you wanted to be where you're at right now. And when you recognize that, that creates the feeling, right? The big thing about the law of attraction manifestation that I don't see really anyone else talk about, it's the feeling. What does it feel like? And when you do whether it's a meditation or a breath exercise, whatever it is that you want to manifest, you have to envision that, and you have to bring the feeling of what it feels like to have that in your life. And it literally will change the chemistry in your body. You'll get goosebumps. You'll feel excited. You'll have that dopamine rush. And you have to bring that feeling in, because that's what gets you on the frequency to attract those things. And so as the moon squaring Neptune, you can't get lost in the bigger picture here. You have to go a little bit above your comfort zone, but just enough to where it's realistic, to where you know you can get it, right? Like, actually challenge yourself, but don't just set these high expectations that you know you're ultimately going to fail at doing. So then it's easier for you to put off and just easier for you to say, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, woe is me, I am not good enough, I'm just going to stay right here. That was me beating my head. Venus is going to conjoin Neptune, though, where this is where the magic lies. I mean, for one, this is like waking up on Valentine's Day and be like it's like Venus conjoining Neptune is not everything that glitters is gold. But Venus conjoining Neptune, I think, is an excellent day to, have that vision, be creative. It does dissolve, like Neptune does dissolve things, and it's Venus. So we're talking about pleasure. We're talking about, like, I don't know, this just reminds me of like a fun Molly trip or something like that. But Venus conjoining Neptune is so like immersed and saturated in you're feeling good and feeling great. And I think this is why I brought this up, is like, this is an excellent day to like bring those emotions towards you, envision what it is that you want and feel that with your heart, right? This looks really exciting. And then the moon's going to sextile Saturn right after that, where there is this, you know what you have to do to get it. You know where you're at, right? Like, this is one of those things where, let's say, for me, I had a lot of, like, I've had visions of where I'm at right now. This is where I wanted to be 5-6 years ago. And there'd be those times where I'd sit there and I was, listening to The Secret, listening to all that shit, listening to, who's that chick that does the channeling? I can't remember her name. Someone would probably know who I'm talking about. The chick that channels this guy and stuff like that. Anyway, I can't remember. Now I'm stuck on that name. Anyway, I would be like, this is what's true in my life. This is what I have to do. And then I would not necessarily snap out of it, but I'd come back to reality and I'd realize where I was at, right? I was donating plasma to feed myself, living in a studio apartment filled with bed bugs with another guy. And I realized where I was at, right? And that's like that moon and Sag sextiling Saturn Aquarius is like, you know where you want to go, but you have to come back to where you're at and you have to reverse engineer it, right? Like, you can't just be like, well, this is where I want to go, but I'm only right here. How do I get there? It's like, work yourself backwards and how do you get there? But also realize that now is good. Like, this is something that I don't care for about electional astrology, because electional astrology is this idea that you can plan the perfect time for something versus, in my opinion, the perfect time is now. Like when it comes to you, when that feeling comes to you to do something, maybe that's the sign to do it. Now is good. This is the best place you could ever be at to do anything that it is that you want to do. But I think there has to be that realization of like, you are here. You're not in this fantasy land, but you have this vision and you have to recognize that you're at where you're at right now. So then you could see, like, again, you don't have the good without the bad. So Wednesday's a really interesting day. I think it's a really good day to be creative. I think it's a really good day to just, again, immerse yourself in that creativity, immerse yourself in that vision, and dream, right? It's a good thing to dream. We get to Thursday, the moon's going to ingress into Capricorn. It's going to square Jupiter, but it will trine Uranus. So it's, moon in Capricorn squaring Jupiter in Aries is like, hey, Jupiter in Aries, I can't just knock everything out of the park. Maybe I just need to focus on this right now. Moon in Capricorn too is also like just not having that emotional investment into it is what that you're doing. And so like Jupiter in Aries is like, come on, you need to go, like hustle, grind. And like, I hate when people are like, you're into hustle culture, Cameron. That's so toxic. It's like, shut up. Like, you guys don't, like, you have to understand, like, the reason why hustle culture exists is because everything in this life is handed to us on a silver platter. You don't have to go and hunt your own food. You don't have to grow your own food. You don't have to you don't have to build your own place. Like, the reason why that never existed was because the motivation was survival. But now that we live in the 21st century where we don't have to just worry about surviving, and if you want to grow more, you want to do more, you want to have a better life, you want to provide for other people, you want to live your dreams, it takes inspiration. And not everything's just about being like, well, why isn't the government doing more for me? And society sucks and I'm the victim. It's like, again, I can't say this enough. Everyone's a victim, but it's up to you to realize, is that victim story you tell yourself helping you or harming you? Because there's people I know that won't do anything with their lives because they were victimized 20 years ago. Like, okay, that sucks. That's bad, but it's time to get over it. There's plenty of people who are way bigger victims than you are and have way bigger actual problems than most of you that don't give a fuck about their victim story. And they actually fucking hate when you say, oh, like, they don't like being held to a smaller level of accountability. They want to be like everybody else. They want to actually achieve what everybody else can because they don't like when people tell them that they can't. And I want you to think about those kind of people. Like, anyway, I don't want to go on that tangent, but this moon in Capricorn squaring Jupiter in Aries is like, hey, that sense of like, you need to do this, you need to go and, do whatever the fuck it is going to be tampered by the lack of emotional investment, right? Like, you might not just be feeling it. And I always talk about the moon in Capricorn is like, sometimes it's a good time to just detach from your emotions and just focus on your work. And that is what the moon in Capricorn is good for. But it's going to be kind of in like, part of you is like, I want to be emotionally invested in this. Why am I not? And you're not always going to be emotionally invested in what you do. Like, if you have to be absolutely inspired every moment of the day to do it as what you want to do, you're never going to get to where you are. Like, if you want to get to where you are, you have to have a discipline. Like, and there's going to be some days that you don't want to do what it is that you want to do. You don't want to take the steps, but you have to do it anyway. And those are the days where most of the growth occurs. So it's going to square Jupiter. It's going to trine Uranus, and there's a breakthrough, right? Like, if you just kind of, you might be like lacking energy, lacking motivation, but if you do it anyway, the moon's going to trine Uranus, where this is like, this works. I'm glad I got out of my comfort zone. I'm glad, I may not have had the energy to do it, but I just detached and I did it anyway. And it felt good. And there's this, maybe some inspirational, creative, disruptive innovation occurs that helps you get to where you want to be. But this is the Sun-Saturn cazimi. So two things with this. Typically, a Sun-Saturn cazimi is like refreshing the Saturn energy, right? But this is what's interesting is this is happening at 27 Aquarius. And so this is refreshing the Saturn topics, but then Saturn's immediately going to be in a Pisces and it stays there. So there's this level of Aquarian that's going to still be applied with Saturn and Pisces, but that's also true because Pluto's going to be in Aquarius. Look at this, guys. Pluto's at 29 Capricorn. It's at 29 Capricorn. We're almost there. It's going to be big for the next 20 years. Anyway, the sun's going to conjoin Saturn. This is that low point. This is the lowest energy point you're going to have. After this, it's all up. But this is your low point. This is when you don't have that energy. This is when you lack that motivation. But this is where the discipline comes in. You have to, it's the same thing I've been saying with Jupiter and Aries, no fear and do it anyway. This isn't just no fear. This isn't about fear. This is more about like, are you disciplined? Are you ready? And this is a great time to reset your discipline too. Because the sun, our willpower, our motivation is at its weakest point, and it's on Saturn, its ruler, and Saturn's telling you you can't do this. You're unable to do this. Here's all your restrictions. Here's all of your limitations. This is why you can't. And my question for you is, it's not that, like, again, there are certain days where you don't need to be doing everything, right? Like, it's not all about hustle, grind 24/7 all day long. Don't do anything else. But this is one of those things where I don't look at this as like a positive thing. I look at this as, this is a day where most of us and most of you, we don't get into astrology because our lives are great and amazing. We get into astrology typically in spiritualities because we have these issues that we want to confront and we want to understand why. And this is one of those things where you're going to feel that low energy. You're going to feel that lack of motivation. But this is the day to really reconfigure your discipline. I've talked sometimes about Venus and Jupiter being like malefics, like bad, and Mars and Saturn being good. And I think because our society is so focused on pleasure and abundance and gluttony and lust and all that stuff, and I'm starting to sound like a fucking Christian or shit like that. But it's real. Like, when most people, like, you just actually need more fucking discipline. You actually just need to grow the fuck up. Like, a lot of you act like children, and you're fucking adults. A lot of you lack discipline. A lot of you lack commitment. And you're always just looking for the next distraction. A part of that is your fault. Part of that isn't your fault. I'm not here to put the blame game, but it is up to you to change it. No one's going to come in and rescue you from where you're at. You have to rescue yourself. But that's also where the power lies. And so I look at the Sun-Saturn Cazimi as, yes, this is a reset in the Saturn energy. We are going to have some more Aquarius things come up. I mean, for the next 20 years as Pluto goes through Aquarius, but we are going to see a lot more of this Aquarian stuff that we've been dealing with for the past 2 or 3 years now come up around this time. Like I said, that snowball has begun, and it's only going to increase more until it turns into an avalanche. So this is that reset moment. This is the time for you to you're going to have that low energy, but it's the days that you don't want to do it are the days that you're going to get the most out of it. And that's what I really see with this day. Looking pretty good in my opinion for that. If you're ready to get real, if you're ready to get raw, if you're ready to get serious, if you're ready to get disciplined. And this is Sun-Saturn. Like, this is maturity. This is growing up. And like, I've said this before with my, some of you are like 19, 20 watching this, and some of you are 60, 70 watching this. Like, we're all just like, we're all our inner child, right? And we just so happen to be in older bodies. And it's so important to realize, like, there is no ultimate goal. There is no end. There's only the means to the end, right? Like, if you're expecting, oh, when I'm 20, I'll figure it out. When I'm 30, I'll figure it out. When I'm 40, that doesn't work. You're always going to have these levels of growing up. There's always going to be these levels of maturity and discipline. And this is one of those times to really take note of that, of this is the time to accept what needs to happen. And this is going to be at that low energy point. So this is just what it is, guys. We get to Friday. The moon's going to make a sextile to Neptune and Venus. So I do like that. And Mercury's going to sextile Jupiter. I actually really like Friday. As the moon sextiles Neptune and Venus, there is this level of, it's fun. Like, the moon in Capricorn, we're still in that detached mood. The moon is starting to almost get in its dark phase now, so it's really waning. But it's, the moon in Capricorn, we're still a little bit detached emotionally from what our work is and what we have to do. But you could still have fun doing it, right? It's kind of like, let's say you're in college and you have this big project that you don't want to do because it's college, but you just go, you know what, fuck my emotions, I'm going to do it anyway. And you're sitting there, you're researching, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Oh, and it leads you down like a wormhole where, again, that might be distracting, but it also might be good. Maybe you learn something. But this moon sextiling Venus and Neptune is kind of like, if you just sit there and do it, if you don't let your emotions get in the way, again, we're emotional creatures, but those can be helpful. Everything can be helpful and harmful, right? The dose makes the poison. And as the moon's in Capricorn, sextiling Neptune and Venus here, this level of, again, if you're just looking for like, I have to be inspired to do anything. No, you fucking don't. You just have to be disciplined. As that moon's in Capricorn, sextiling Neptune and Venus, there is this level of, if you just continue with your thing, you just continue what you're doing, getting prepared, whatever that looks like for you, or doing what work you have to do, there is this level of fun and creativity that comes. Like, have you ever been Have you ever had to work on a task that you didn't want to do and you just did it anyway? But then in the middle of doing it, like I always talk about like the devil's hands or idle hands of the devil's workshop. It's so true. But when you're focused on something and you're doing something, you allow your mind all of the space to not think about things. And this is one of those times where when you're just focused, it's like your creative imagination gets inspired. Your level of working things out and seeing a bigger picture and having fun anyway. It's kind of like just get involved with your hands with what you're doing and have fun with it. Like sure, you may not want to. It's like, for example, like in the summers, I used to have to bale hay in Montana. There's a lot of people I have that follow me that live in the Midwest, but a lot of you don't. You live in big cities. Baling hay sucks. That is the worst fucking job. It is literally the worst. And it's never like, oh, it's just a couple bales. It's like hundreds of acres of throwing 75-pound or 150-pound bales of hay on top of a fucking huge stack on a trailer. And you keep moving. And you're sneezing all day long. You're getting the straw cutting you up. It's getting in your socks and there's bugs everywhere. It sucks. It's not, no one wakes up and goes, boy, I'm ready to bale hay. But when you're doing it and you're just killing it, you're doing the work, you're not worried about your emotions. Especially like I was with, like, it'd be like my stepbrother and his cousin. We'd be doing it. We'd have fun. You know what I mean? Like you want to, sometime when you're on top of the trailer and you're fixing the bales, you like slip and you fall in the hay. And that's kind of funny. This is just like one of those things. Like you can't worry about, you may not want to do it, but once you're in it and you're doing it, you're going to have some fun somehow. Cause that's just a part of a human being, but you also have to like be a fun person. You know what I mean? So we get to Saturday, all types of stuff going on Saturday. Moon's going to ingress into Aquarius. It's going to conjoin Mercury, and then it will sextile Jupiter, and then it will trine Mars, and then it will square Uranus. So the moon's doing that the pinball thing of just bing, 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 bing. And then the sun moves into Pisces. Like I said before, the other day when the sun conjoined Saturn was the lowest point. Things slowly start to move up here. The sun, our willpower. I mean, we're at the very end of winter when the sun goes into Pisces. We're still in winter, but it's changing. It's starting to get a little bit warmer. It might even get a little bit like for here in Denver, the winter's really dry. It's going to get a little bit more wet. We won't be in those negative temperatures. There'll be a lot more snow, but it'll be a lot more wet. So there's a lot more moisture in the air, which is way better than just being in the dryness all the time. So Saturday's got a lot going on. And the big thing with Saturday is Moon's going to go into Aquarius. It first conjoins. What does it do first? Hold on. I'm a little confused too. It conjoins Mercury, sextiles Jupiter. Is that right? Maybe it sextiles Jupiter, then conjoins Mercury. Either way, the moon's going to go into Aquarius where, look at all of this Aquarius stuff we have going on. This is like, do not take offense. By the way, I might be hard on a zodiac sign I'm super hard on zodiac signs. I don't ever place that onto an individual human being. Like so many, like I saw this TikTok video that was really funny about astrology. It was actually really funny. And people are like, astrology is just like space racism and it's the gateway to fascism, which shut the fuck up. No, it's not. Don't even get me started on that. But I just want to say, like, I don't use this. I'm like, oh, you're an Aquarius. God, you must suck or this or that. There's no human beings are very, very intricate creatures. We're very hyper personalized. And just because you have one place, it doesn't mean you're exactly like this. My job though here is to kind of explain the vibe of the whole world. And it's up to you to understand how that relates to your personal life. But why I prefaced with that to say, this is like so much of Aquarius is so NPC. Like it's so just like, yes, eat your seed oils. Yes, you must. January 6th was an insurrection and the end of democracy. Like, don't take offense to that, but it's very like it's just you're another brick in the wall. And I'm not saying that's like, oh, if you're an Aquarius, you're just another brick in the wall. But this is the kind of vibe here. There's just like you, like the Gen Z and the millennials will know this. We live in a society. And that is what is going on with this Aquarius stuff at the moment. Yes, the sun is still in Aquarius, but it will ingress into Pisces later on Saturday evening. But the moon's in Aquarius. We're really connected to, like, we are in the society. Even if you don't like the society or you love the society, you're in it. And the moon's going to conjoin Mercury. It's going to sextile Jupiter, where there is this level of, oh, and did I even talk about Mercury sextiling Jupiter? I didn't. So let me mention Mercury sextiling Jupiter just real quick. It's literally just like sometimes mental gymnastics can help you with the motivation part. Like, for example, like some people, I'm very simple where it's like, if you want to do something, just do it. But sometimes people need like, well, in order to do this, I have to, first do this. And if I have, if my clock is facing the southeast and if I wake up at 7:30 and I do, all of this stuff and then I'll be motivated. It's like, whatever the fuck does it. Okay. Like, I don't care how you have to get to point B, just get to point B. And if some people it's walking a straight line, some people you have to walk backwards and do a somersault and twist around. Whatever it is you got to do to get yourself going, do it. And Mercury sextiling Jupiter is so like just the whatever mental gymnastics you got to make up to get motivated and to go where you need to go, just fucking do it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, for example, with I love watching the show Hoarders. It's just a very interesting show, but they are like the mental gymnastics people of like, oh, well, it's like just this pile of shit. And it's just like, well, I'm saving this for, 20 years from now. And well, this bag of trash is really important to me. And then they go like, okay. Well, let's just start one thing at a time. And they go, it's the mental gymnastics. And sometimes that could be helpful to motivate you. And I think, for example, whatever mental gymnastics you need to motivate you to keep going, that's what the Mercury sextile Jupiter is for. That's going to happen on Friday. But I think that continues into Saturday because the moon's going to be there where it's like, yeah, the mental gymnastics are working. And it might be a crutch, but like, again, sometimes you need training wheels. Like, you're not just going to sit on a bike and just go. Like, sometimes you need the training wheels. And that's what I kind of see that as. So then the moon, again, conjoins Mercury, sextiles Jupiter. It's going to trine Mars, where I think that's a little bit motivating. Will be a little bit frustrating too, just because not everything's going to go your way. I think the issue with having all of the crutches in the system set up for you to continue on is you have more points of vulnerability for things to not work, and then that will demotivate you. But the moon trines Mars, where it is motivating. It is going forward. The only issue is the moon's going to square Uranus. This is what's so funny about labels, especially with people. Like, if you identify as a certain group of people, not everyone, like, people are not a monolith. Like, when people say, like, for example, like, oh, this is how black people feel. It's like, not every black person feels the same. Like, believe it or not, people have different opinions. But when you try to like group people into something and throw a label on them as if they're all the same, that's just how that's how you get like, fascism. But the moon's going to square Uranus. You might be in a group of people, for example, like you could get a religious sect. This might be more true for things like Christianity and maybe not so much as like, well, Islam would probably have this too. But you can get a group of people and you'd be like, I'm with my group. But then you start talking about other specific opinions about things and realize, oh, we do not all share the same opinion. We just so happen to share a label. And that's important because as the moon squares Uranus is like, there's going to be just some disruption with the group thought here. There's going to be some kind of like, if you're trying to identify with a big group right now, I'm like, this is who we are. It's not all going to be the same. It's not all going to be the, you guys aren't all going to agree on everything. There's going to be disruptions, if you ever try to get, this is why I couldn't do bands, because trying to get 5 guys together to sit in a room at the same time to make music is fucking goddamn near impossible. We all want to make music. We're all musicians. We are all in a band. But, or like, well, I want this name and I want to do this riff and I want this beat. And it's all these different things. So it's really hard to work in a group dynamic, right? But the sun ingresses into Pisces. That energy is starting to change. And the sun in Pisces is like, all right, we're not in that rigid darkness anymore. We're kind of more free flowing. We're kind of a little bit more open. We're a little bit more adaptable. And that brings us to Sunday. The moon will conjoin Saturn. That's a little rough. It's just kind of like, the moon after all this Aquarius stuff is like, I'm with my tribe. I'm with my people. And then it's like the moon squares Uranus and someone says something and now everyone's arguing. And then you're just in the middle of all this argument and you're just like, why am I here? That's moon conjoining Saturn. But then it goes into Pisces late onto Sunday night. And then we have the new moon in Pisces. This one's really, that's for Saturday. This one's really important, guys. This is where Saturn's about to ingress. Again, on the news, in the world, where that snowball is rolling, it's going to turn into an avalanche really, really soon. Saturn's going to enter Pisces. And Pluto's about to enter Aquarius. We're about to have a really big shift, so get ready. I don't really know what to tell you to do to get ready. Well, I kind of do. I'm going to talk about that in my delineation episode. But new moon, new you. But this is a new moon in Pisces in the mutable signs. What needs to change? We're not in Aquarius anymore where it's like Aquarius. It's like the dead of winter. Think of it as like you're a hunter-gatherer. It's snowing, it's winter, you have what you have, right? You can't go out and hunt for food. It's too fucking cold. You have the firewood that you have. These are the supplies that you have to deal with, and you have to deal with a limited amount of them. As we go into Pisces season, and there's a new moon in Pisces, things are changing. This is a new moon to change things. The new moon in Capricorn, that was a time to initiate a change. Like what change, or not change, but start something new. Like, all right, this is what I'm getting ready for. This is what that I'm moving towards. New moon in Aquarius, we're here. It's time to get, stable in this energy for a while. New moon in Pisces, it's time to change things up. It's a new moon, so we're resetting everything, but in the sign of change, in the sign of like, all right, well, the sun's starting to go up, so maybe you don't just go hunting all the time, but like maybe starting to do a little bit of this, starting to do a little bit of that, and kind of just moving things around and preparing. Because then when you go to like the new moon in Aries, which will technically, well, there's like an eclipse around that time, but the new moon in Aries is like, it's spring, we're starting, we're going. This is what we're initiating. But these next 30 days are about changing, and that's what the new moon represents. We get to next week, and Venus ingresses into Aries. That sounds fun. Actually, technically, Venus is at 29 Pisces, so it enters Aries at like midnight, like 11:59 on Sunday. So pretty much Monday morning, we'll wake up with Venus and Aries. Mercury squares Uranus. Sounds like a wrench being thrown in the plans, and Mercury makes a trine to Mars. This is really a big moment, is when Mercury makes a trine to Mars, because we haven't had that since Mars entered shadow and Mercury retrograded in Libra. So we're kind of coming back, we're kind of coming back to a lot of the stuff that happened in like September in a way. But this Mercury trine Mars is a really big deal next week. But this is really much more of a bigger week than next week. So I think that's what I got for you guys this week. I think the biggest thing is this is the low point in the energy. This is the time to get serious, get disciplined. You may not have the emotional energy. You may not, want to do it, but just do it anyway, right? Nothing lasts forever. If you just get up and get going, you'll have the motivation. Things will keep moving forward. We have a lot of changes for the next few months, guys. So be prepared. I love and appreciate every single one of you. And I'll be seeing you guys next week.